Hello again, my name's Andy Stevens. This is episode 2 of The Opinion Piece, looking at trade bodies, associations, regulators, etc. Last week we looked at being regulated and registered. This week we're going to look at trade bodies, associations, federations, councils, bodies, the list goes on. John and James are back because they're the experts in this. Welcome back, guys. I was just going to list a few, but as we said just before we started recording, we've got to go home tonight. There's so many associations, federations, council bodies. James, are there too many? Because I was trying to go through this list I've got here and it would take hours.
My personal opinion, there are far too many.
Why is that though? Because they can just be set up tomorrow morning by anybody.
Because I guess the assumption is that originally there were a few, and those few didn't cater for the greater demands of the splinter groups, or what. I assume that's how things evolve.
Because roofing alone,
we have quite a few.
Dozen.
Well, you're more up to date than I am, Andy. So yes, there are plenty in roofing. I mean, because they're all dealing with a particular expertise.
Would it be better to work together?
Well,
John, you mentioned it, didn't you? That if you bring in roofing, plastering, brickwork, dry lining, everything, and work together, we'd be a bit better for the industry.
Yeah, we do have a history of not collaborating particularly well. I think if you go back in time, and I used to be in charge of something called, or chair of the Trade Association Forum. So the Trade Association of Trade Associations, and we met when I was doing that a long time ago. And what you found is there were a lot of traditional associations within construction industry that historically they dealt with everything. They dealt with labour stuff, they dealt with standards, they dealt with training. And then over time, the nature of the associations changed a bit, and they were seen as our industry changed and we're so predominantly SMEs and micros, the boards of the trade associations tended to move a bit the other way. Who's got time, who's got money, who invests in the association, and it's the big tier ones, tier twos were quite often the board structures. Then it was felt that these didn't represent. So someone would go off and set something up that's, say, a specialist area, and then someone else would do, well, that's not us, we'll go and do our bits. As in, you mentioned roofing. Roofing's got a lot of different skills and different technologies and different ways of doing things, different materials.
It's a great example, because it is very widespread.
Yes.
Yeah.
Materials, skill sets.
No, it's very broad.
Lead work,
Yep.
flat roofs, pit roofs, cut roofs.
Yep.
There's an awful lot.
Yep.
Sorry, I just want to, apologies for interrupting, but something was really key there for me. Representation.
Yes.
Now, everybody knows 2% of this industry is the big boys, as we call them, but 98% is micro and SME. Government, nearest damn it, will listen to CLC, the Construction Leadership Council, to hear about what's happening in the industry, etc. But why is the 98% not being listened to? Because that's quite a big percentage of us.
Yeah, you do have certain associations that are designed to represent that, as in I chair one actually in glazing, Certas, which is an SME and micro. But then you actually go to your members and talk about getting involved in, do they have the time for this? And time is money to them. If they're off the tools, they're not earning, and then you need someone to represent you, but do they represent you? Are they really of your mindset? How do you get these things together? So we do a lot of work around digital, trying to get things through like Facebook forums and communicating out of hours, and when they're on the jobs, on their phones and all this. But it's very difficult, because when you get back to actually getting something done, and say you're going in and talking to government about a policy, who's going to sit there during the day? And it's going to be the tier ones. They're going to have the structures, and they're going to have the people they can throw at this. And much as we think we know what it's like for someone, I think I'm reasonably in touch with it, with the thoughts and feelings of others. But unless you live it, it's very difficult to actually sit there and react to something when you say, oh no, does that affect me that way? Oh no, but they think like this, and it gets very muddled. And so we need to find different ways of communicating, see what the industry is. I know from where I sit in roles that I do, trying to map it down, but then the next layer is, who do they listen to? Who do they feel represents them? So we go to, not only to say our message, but actually to hear back what the reality is.
It's the way it's transmitted.
So sorry to come in here. Just I'd say slightly different. I can only speak for us, for our federation. Our members are very engaged. So we have lots of regional events. We also do national surveys, etc. And I hear from directly from the members about the issues that impacting them. I will say on behalf of the CLC, I think they have become far more better at listening. So I think that we all know from COVID that kind of brought sort of collaboration to a much better place. But subsequently, I was only with the last week with a senior member of the CLC and bringing up particular points to do with our industry and the impact of you don't get this right. And he made the point, yes, we do realise that the vast majority of the industry is made up of the self-employed, as I've referred to in a previous episode, etc. So it's very important to them. I think they're getting to understand it a lot more.
Which is brilliant to hear, but it would be great as a small builder tradesperson that you can hear that. And I think it goes back to how it's understood and transmitted. We've talked so many times, John, about a new regulation or a new policy, and you think, right, it's 74 pages here. I'm a self-employed trade. I ain't reading that. I think this is another idea of obviously having a voice for this 98%. We can quickly get the latest update from XYZ, put out a short video. You can sit in your van and watch it while you're having a cup of tea and a fag, or kids have gone to bed. Because at the moment, we just don't have the time. And I think, as you said, social media, technology is an easier way of getting the message across, because as a trade, I put my trader, we should be up to date with everything, but I don't think we are.
But it is perception, isn't it? It's that thing, as in, don't get me wrong, James, your NFRC, you've been doing it for years, there's a big reach there, but the investment of time and effort that it got to get to that place, that's not the same in all associations. And when if you step back and what voice do government hear, they hear this collective different views that clash. And I would think sometimes when they do consultations, they must look at the responses and think, well, this industry doesn't agree with itself. Over here we have someone with this title saying this and someone saying that and all that. And then do you engage with it? As in, you and I may be friends. Sorry for that, but we are. I'll out you on that. But we will be perceived differently, just naturally. Look at even the way we dress. As in, it does create that perception, and someone that trusts you might not trust me, and vice versa. And we have to find a way of working that and taking these perceptions and things out of it.
I really believe the CLC, as you rightly say, James, if they're starting to understand the micro businesses, the SMEs, why not have some of us on the committee? So let's say, a roofing contractor in Southend, or a small building contractor in Bristol. Every day they're in it, up to their eyes. They've got their finger on the pulse. Material price rising, lack of skilled labour, deliveries being late, changing rate, whatever it is. Will CLC see that?
Well, they should do, Andy. If in that case that organisation, as say, were members of us, it's my job to represent them and to say, no, that ain't right. So that's my job. I can't speak for outside, but my members can hold me to account. That is my job to do that on their behalf.
My experience, having been part of a few federations and bodies, that's quite rare, James. It's great to hear, and it should be standard across all of these organisations, but there's you and maybe a couple of others that are on that level, I'd say.
I mean, we were involved with something just before the election was announced that, on behalf of the members, we were pushing. I can't say what it is now for obvious reasons, but, that was very much grassroots what the members want.
So just to bring this episode to a close, I think we've agreed there's far too many organisations, structures, etc., federations. If we quickly look at this CSCS announcement recently, for the people that aren't clear, who makes that decision based on what? research / conversations in the industry? Because it's a big thing affecting a lot of trades.
Sorry, what's CSCS announcement?
So the James, you probably understand it. It's obviously the qualification for the CSCS cards. They've, the grandfather.
Oh, the
rights.
industry accreditation running out.
So
yes,
that's a big thing.
yeah.
And I haven't got figures on it, but I guess a lot of self-employed or from micro businesses. Are the self-employed and micro businesses being listened to, or are those decisions kind of made at another level? Because it's a big thing coming up, big thing. Almost as big as...
Yeah, I think it's a... As in we mentioned it earlier, you have ground floor, you have the Building Safety Act, you have a new structure of requirement in industry of proving your competence when you're on site. I think it's fair to say CSCS will have had to adapt to ensuring that there is frameworks to prove it. I think it's difficult to say quite how that decision is made. CSCS will have a board, it will work with government on certain elements. It came out of CITB, I think, originally, and it still has a lot of those relationships. I think beyond that, we need to find ways of helping industry prove that it is competent to do the work that it is supposed to do. And I think CSCS is part of that puzzle, because it will help in a certain area, whatever is within that. And I think it's mapping the industry. The hardest thing I've been trying to do over the last year is actually map down who is where in the industry, what is their reach, what is their responsibility, and when you get to competence, what frameworks do they use to know that someone is competent to do the work that they're undertaking, and where are the gaps? And when you start drawing it down, coming back to your original point, the number of associations, it's huge.
But what I find mad, I'm 48, I've never had a CSCS card. Okay. If I was to go and apply for one now, the highest I could get would be labourer. I don't know what a CSCS card looks like because I've only worked in your house or whoever's houses. I've never gone on to commercial, well, not in this country, but do we not need to have that standard across the... So if I suddenly wanted to do site work tomorrow, I couldn't. But I'm 48 and I've been doing it quite a long time. But the highest I could turn up would be a labourer. Is that not... It's almost like separating the industry, isn't it, into two. You've got your residential works and then your commercial. Back to, is there too many of these things ticking along where everyone's like, shit, what do I need? I'm coming into this industry, I need that.
Well, in our case, with the industry accreditation to support those who've been, roofing in that regard, we've developed a framework based on experience for assessment. So I know sometimes experience is thought of as not important, and it's probably the most important thing when you've been doing a job. You think to your best of your ability for a very long time. So there is that ability to, number one, be assessed on the basis of your experience, and number two, to obviously go through any professional development to bring you up to speed on something. So that is something we're very closely working on to try and help those who are coming to the end of their industry accreditation.
I think it's a different...
Because it's very difficult, it's very, to expect somebody to necessarily want to go through a vocational qualification is going to be tough, I would suggest.
I go back to the guest on the previous episodes of the Opinion Piece, Charlie Mullins.
Yeah.
How would you get him to go and sit to do an accreditation? Well, he's only sold his company in 2021 for 146 million, but he's not got the paperwork to be a plumber. Obviously, he did an apprenticeship, but no, interesting point, and I think in the future we will address that because it's quite an interesting topic.
But competence does relate to skills, knowledge and experience, as well as behaviours. So there are different ways of meeting it, which you have seen with the building control approver bodies that actually operate a different way to how they prove that a building inspector is competent. And we've got that throughout construction. Construction down to home improvement, you're talking about domestic, a lot of it is based on risk. As in, if you're operating on a high level tower block and you're doing a job on the outside of the building that affects many different residencies, the risk you present is much greater than if you're in a small 3-bed semi. And so the requirements around how I know that you are as good as you should be will be higher. because the risk is greater, particularly when you get into life aspects and in not only people's health, people's life and fire risk and structure. So it's the industry will have to vary depending on the environment it's working in.
Good way to finish. John, James, thank you for this week. Next week we have, I was going to say the interesting topic, but they're big words. Trades, look away now. Office workers, you're going to like this. Retrofitting, sustainability, net zero, carbon neutral, AI. The industry is going through a massive change. We touched upon it. For the last 5 or 10 years, we've seen huge changes. And I think with AI and other things coming in, it's going to be even bigger. Next week, we're going to do our best to address these key points.